Deep within the walls of one of America's most secure prisons, a man did what no one thought was possible. Under the watchful eyes of heavily armed guards, surrounded by towering fences and razor wire, he pulled off an escape so daring, so well executed, that it left authorities scrambling in disbelief. His plan wasn't just bold, it was genius. What happened next would become one of the most shocking prison breaks in modern American history. John Matthews had spent years behind bars at the Northeast Correctional Complex, a maximum security prison in Tennessee. His crimes were severe, his sentence long, and his chances of seeing the outside world again were nearly non-existent. He was convicted of armed robbery and attempted murder, and with multiple escape attempts on his record, he was considered one of the most dangerous inmates in the system. Despite the high security, John refused to accept life behind bars. He spent years studying the prison, its routines, weaknesses, and the complacency of the guards. He watched how shifts changed, how inspections were done, and where blind spots existed in the security cameras. He wasn't just planning an escape, he was designing the perfect prison break. John knew that a simple breakout attempt wouldn't work. He needed something more, something that would allow him to slip through the cracks without raising alarms. Over the years, he had secretly built connections with other inmates, some of whom worked in the prison's maintenance department. These connections gave him access to critical information, ventilation systems, sewage tunnels, and hidden storage areas where contraband could be stashed. His escape plan revolved around a forgotten tunnel beneath the prison, one that had been sealed off decades ago but never properly monitored. The tunnel ran from an old maintenance building within the prison walls to a drainage system outside. The problem? The entrance was covered by a heavy steel grate, locked and bolted from the outside. John needed tools, and he needed them without attracting attention. He and his cellmate, Marcus, who had once worked as a mechanic, crafted makeshift tools from scraps of metal, pieces of wire, and even broken bed frames. They sharpened metal rods into makeshift screwdrivers and saws. Every piece was smuggled, hidden, and passed between trusted inmates without alerting the guards. The plan had to be executed with perfect timing. A single mistake would mean solitary confinement, or worse. He studied the guard shifts for months, noting the exact time when the least number of officers were on patrol. The sweet spot was between 2:30 a.m. and 3:15 a.m., when most guards were either on break or patrolling other sections. The night of the escape arrived. The air was thick with tension, every step calculated, every breath measured. John and Marcus moved quietly through the dimly lit corridors, dressed in dark prison uniforms that blended into the shadows. Their first objective, reaching the abandoned maintenance room without triggering any motion sensors. Using a stolen keycard, they bypassed the locked maintenance door, something they had secured weeks earlier when Marcus distracted a guard while John swiped the card. Inside, they found the tunnel entrance just as they had planned. But there was one problem. The steel grate was tougher than expected. Their homemade tools were barely making a dent. Time was running out. They could hear distant footsteps, guards making their rounds. John worked faster, sweat dripping down his forehead. With one final, forceful push, the grate snapped free. The bolts loosened just enough for them to squeeze through. They dropped down into the tunnel, landing in inches of stagnant water. The air was damp, thick with the stench of rust and decay. Crawling on their stomachs, they moved through the tight, pitch-black passage, using a piece of string tied to John's ankle to stay connected. If one got stuck, the other could pull them free. Just as they neared the tunnel's exit, disaster struck. A section of the tunnel had collapsed, leaving only a small opening barely big enough for one person at a time. John went first, pushing through the jagged debris, cutting his arms in the process. Marcus followed, but his foot got caught in a twisted piece of rebar. He struggled, panic setting in. John turned back, risking precious minutes to help Marcus free his foot. Finally, with one hard yank, Marcus was loose. They pushed forward, reaching the final grate that separated them from freedom. This was it, the last barrier. John used their last tool, a makeshift crowbar, to pry the rusted grate open. It groaned under the pressure, threatening to alert nearby security. With one final heave, the grate popped loose and fresh air rushed in. They emerged in a wooded area just outside the prison's perimeter. The escape wasn't unnoticed for long. By the time they were a mile away, the alarms blared through the night, sirens piercing the quiet darkness. Searchlights scanned the fields. Bloodhounds were released, and every available officer was deployed to track them down. John and Marcus ran through the dense woods, staying low, avoiding roads, and using a small compass John had stolen months earlier to navigate north. They had hidden supplies, cash, clothes, and burner phones, left by an outside contact who had been waiting for this moment. The manhunt stretched for days. News stations broadcasted their faces, warning the public to stay alert. The FBI joined the search, and every highway, bus station, and train terminal was monitored. Marcus made a critical mistake. He used a stolen credit card at a gas station in Georgia, alerting authorities to their whereabouts. Within hours, they were cornered in an abandoned barn. SWAT teams surrounded them, rifles trained on every exit. John refused to surrender. He made a desperate dash for the nearby tree line, but before he could reach it, a taser shot sent him crashing to the ground. Marcus was tackled moments later. Their escape had lasted only 4 days, but it had shaken the entire prison system to its core. John and Marcus were sent back to prison, their sentences extended and their privileges stripped. They were placed in solitary confinement, where they spent 23 hours a day in a tiny, windowless cell. Security measures in prisons nationwide were tightened, ensuring no one could replicate their escape. Despite their failure, their story became legend, a testament to human ingenuity, determination, and the desperate will to be free. Even behind bars, John Matthews had achieved something extraordinary. He had outsmarted the system, if only for a brief moment. But the question remains, was this truly the end of John Matthews' story? Or was he already planning his next move?